Relationship is It podcast, and it is a relationships and society podcast. It's been going on since about 2019. And since that time, I have charted it worldwide in the relationships and culture categories. Also peaked at number 2 in the USA. And I am an entrepreneur and founder of Anna Karen Productions. So basically my production company is like a one-stop shop. You can come in and you can get photos, you can get your podcast recorded, audio, visual, we say promo shots, everything. All right, so key achievements. I've done multiple sold out shows across the country. I performed at the Roots Picnic twice in 2022 and 2024. 2022 was with Podcast Boys, and in 2024 I performed with Tonight's Conversations. I also was featured on the Tonight's Conversations tour for this past spring session. And then I also did other pods like See the Thing Is, Hard or Soft Show, Larry Lino, and a bunch more. Basically, whatever your favorite podcast is, I've either been a guest on or had some part of. So when I was starting my podcast, the main thing I really wanted to do was push real stories. I feel like we were at a time where people weren't talking about real stuff. It was about what social media decided was real. And half the stuff you see on social media is not real. Like, we're not talking about the real situations of, yeah, he may be broke, but he's a nice guy. Am I going to wife him? Probably not, but there are other things we can talk about. You know, maybe he can show me some good restaurants, something like that. Like, you know, just a bunch of different other stuff. I also want to make sure I brought my own twist to everything that I was putting out. Like, once again, going back to the social media thing, I don't want to talk about what everybody else is talking about. I want to put my own twist on it. And then just genuine emotional connections. I feel like a lot of being popular is what society says is popular. And that's not what it is to me. Like, yeah, I don't know if y'all know this, but women fart, okay? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about every time you go out with somebody, that doesn't mean it's going to end up being your person. Like, there are other stuff that we can talk about. I always want to make sure I bring my own spin to everything, but with a honesty. So sometimes we're gonna laugh, sometimes we're gonna cry, sometimes we're gonna talk about what you should be talking about with the lady, but maybe you feel safer talking about it to me. It's okay, we're gonna do all that. So since we started it, like I said, I've had a global reach, diverse listeners, your librarian, your homegirl, your auntie and them, like, it's a very broad range of people, and just a lot of strong community engagement, you know, whether it's our give backs, whether it's our live shows, like, everybody comes together, and we all cousins. Like, by the time we leave here, we all gonna be cousins too, y'all just don't know it yet, okay? My entrepreneurial journey. Anna Karen Productions is my baby. It's named after my mom and my grandma, and like I said, we specialize in bringing art to life through commercials, podcasts, photo shoots, and social media. So sometimes people come to me and say, hey, you know, I really want my website done over. Sometimes people come to me and say, hey, I need about 5K followers, but real followers. How do I get them within a month? So it's all different things. Basically, I just want to empower creators and businesses to show their stories in impactful ways. So let's get to the beginning of everything. How to start a podcast. I'm going to be the first person to tell you, everybody don't need a podcast. We're going to be honest and just say that. Everybody don't need one. Everybody don't need one. I know every time you and your homies get together, like, yo, bro, what's your stories? No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't. We don't want to hear that, okay? And you know your homie not consistent anyway. So it's going to end up with you doing the majority of the work. Like, I just want to start with everybody don't need a podcast. Now, say by chance you do find somebody who's like, yo, we locked in. I know I can do work with you. We both money-minded. Let's get it popping. Okay, great. Here's how we should start. First, you should identify your niche and target audience. A lot of times people just grab a microphone, sit down in their living room, and go on like 2 and 3 hour talks about things that don't even make sense and they don't transition well. And it's like, yeah, that one episode is gonna be funny, but because you don't have a niche and you don't have a target audience, they're not coming back next week to listen. If you even sit down and record next week, okay? Next, you wanna invest in quality equipment and software. Notice I said quality and not expensive. When I first started, I was recording in my living room on my phone. That was it. Like, and now here we are 5 years later, and I have my own production company. So quality, not expensive. If you are just starting out, you don't need to go max out all you and your homie credit cards because you're trying to figure out how I can get this MacBook, this expensive mic, X, Y, and Z. Like, there are other good things that don't cost as much, and you don't want to OD in the beginning because who's to say you're going to keep it going? Next, develop a consistent content strategy and brand identity. When people hear your podcast, they should think, oh, this is that. You can't have a sports podcast and then every other week y'all talking about relationships. What are we doing? What are we doing, right? You can't have a relationship podcast, but every other week y'all want to talk about politics. What are we talking about? And for each episode, which one thing or two things that the listeners can guarantee they're going to hear? When you think of Breakfast Club, what's one segment you always hear in Breakfast Club? This is when y'all say something. Breakfast Club, what's the segment you always hear in Breakfast Club? Donkey of the day, exactly. What's something else? Just with the mess, you know what I'm saying? Like stuff like that. Like when you think of these certain podcasts, there are certain things that you know you're going to get from each episode. Next, plan for growth from the outset, right? When you start a podcast, you should have a goal. By the end of this month, what do I want? Maybe I want this many episodes. Maybe I want this many listeners. Maybe I want this many streams. Maybe I want this many followers. And it could be something a week, it could be a month, it could be a quarter, it could be a year. What are your goals and what's the plan to help you reach them? Because if you don't have a plan, you're just doing anything. You know what I mean? Next, let's talk about monetizing your podcast. I'm gonna speed up a little bit. Monetizing your podcast. So when we think of monetization strategies, what are some things you can think of just off the top of your head, ways to make money from a podcast? Ads. Next. Sponsors. Anyone else? You guys are killing it today, all right? So first would be sponsorships and advertisements. Now, when you first start your podcast, you can't go in with, yo, next week I'm gonna get an ad from Blue Chew. Maybe no, you're not. You're not. It's not gonna go that fast. But there are different brands that will invest in you and set up different sponsorships that may be a little bit lower. So it may not be Blue Chew, but you may be able to get like a gas station deal or something like that. You know what I'm saying? Like they still got good money and they still want to spend. So the key is not to overthink yourself, but I'm not saying sell yourself short. There are different companies that you can reach out to that honestly are within your reach. If you want a soda sponsorship, you don't have to go straight to Pepsi. There are other different local brands, whether it be alcohol or whether it be vineyards, whether it be something that just applies to your specific niche. So say like you do a sports podcast. You might not be able to reach out to like FanDuel, but it may be something else local that you can get your hands on and have a conversation with. Next one, subscription models and exclusive content. No, I'm not telling you you need to sell feet pics. That's not what that means. That's not what this means right here, okay? When I say subscription models, it means maybe you can have something set up where like, hey, if you pay $4 or $5 a month, you can get one extra episode a week. Or like, hey, you know, if you pay this extra amount per week, you can get a personal message per week. You can have a diary set up. You can have like a journal. You can have group chat set up or like lives or Zooms or StreamYards between you and your loyal listeners. So if you provide the content, people won't come, especially if they like you and they like hearing what you guys say. So the next one, and this is the big one. I feel like people sleep on this one the most. It's live shows and merchandise. Live shows is where you are going to make your best money, okay? Not to mention, just off ticket sales. Merchandise is also a big one, okay? So if you're selling t-shirts at your shows, stickers, coffee mugs, whatever the case may be, like, this is dope. Now this one, I'm not gonna say is going to happen automatically right off the bat because you obviously have to build that audience first, but it's still another good take. And affiliate marketing and partnerships. So a lot of times people be sleeping on things like Amazon affiliates and things like that. You don't really need a large brand for that or a large following. You can set that right up. You can talk about something every episode, say, yo, when this is over, go to the link in my bio, check this out, blah, 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 blah. Even if people aren't buying anything, depending on which affiliates you're set up with, you still get paid for clicks. And if you get paid for clicks, I just need you to look at it. You don't even gotta buy it. Like, that's fine with me. Another thing I wanna say is that's not up here. When you're starting your podcast, there are different distribution companies that will pay you for listens. And I know Spotify does it where you don't even have to have a large following. Like, soon as you sign up for a Spotify podcast, you're eligible to get monetized. So if you go there, you can get clicks. It's kind of similar to what Anchor used to do. But yeah, so if you're first starting out, that's a quick way to get money. Are you gonna get like thousands of dollars? I'm not saying that, but you might even make enough to at least pay for studio time if that's what you wanna do, or new segments, things like that. Okay, so let's talk about growing your podcast. A lot of times when people are starting up, they think there's only space for me in this arena, and that is absolutely false, okay? Cross promotion with other podcasts and influencers is one of the quickest ways to grow your podcast, but you have to be social and actually want to work with other podcasts. And I know that kind of sounds like, well, that's my thing, how it's gonna be our thing. Like, if you pick somebody who might be not necessarily in your lane, but you have the similarities, whether it be like, you know, banter, comedy, or whatever the case may be. Like, when I first started, I didn't think that I had to be by myself all the time. I was always reaching out to people, and not like somebody with 750K followers. Like, no, who else has like a similar following, but I also see they're consistent like I am. They're releasing something every week. They're investing in themselves. They're serious about getting this off the ground. Like, yeah, we both might not have like a big following, but we can come together and grow it together. I feel like when we think about people starting off in different markets, like, you know, Issa Rae, she had like her few people that she worked with all the time. Adam Sandler, he had like the same 4 actors in almost all his movies. Like, just finding people that you can build with is very important.